Welcome back. Life as we know it has radically changed over the past several weeks due to the COVID outbreak. If there ever was an understatement, that would be it. We can all agree that there's never going to be a perfect time to reopen and that nothing is absolutely risk-free in life. And it certainly goes for the legal system as well. Every other aspect of American life is dealing with this, and sooner or later, so will our court system, all of it dramatically changing, upending, and the law has had to keep up with it all. The court system is now being forced to deal with major disruptions and also a spate of lawsuits and legal issues that were probably thought unimaginable just a couple months ago. Now, for the next few segments, we'll be joined by the guys, our panel of attorneys, who will help us, or at least try to sort it out. Let's start by introducing them, all via Zoom. For the first time, fingers crossed. Starting at the top, Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC, and he's former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. Doug von Oiste, founding partner of Doug von Oiste, focusing on corporate misconduct. He was also selected by the Legal 500, one of the most influential trial lawyers in the country. And James Kousouros at the bottom of our Brady Bunch box there, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan. He sits on the board of directors of the New York City Criminal Bar Association, and he also frequently lectures at both New York Law School and the bar associations in Queens and New York City and beyond. All right, guys, let's start off with some of the practical aspects of our current situation. Courts at every level have been postponed or canceled proceedings in response to the outbreak. Let's start at the top. You got the Supreme Court. I mean, this would have been inconceivable. They're hearing oral arguments via teleconference, doesn't have to meet now in person. On the state level, court systems dramatically changed the way that they do business. Jury trials, they've been suspended just about everywhere, so that means defendants' constitutional right to a speedy trial certainly is being put to the test. In-person proceedings also on hold for the most part, and extensions are being granted at all levels, video conferencing being used whenever possible. You don't have to be Perry Mason to realize that an already backlogged court system is going to be even worse when things open up in whatever form they will. Plus COVID, it is running rampant in our jail and prison system, and inmates and guards alike are getting sick in huge numbers. Think of it as a petri dish when they go behind walls there. It's causing some places to release inmates due to safety concerns. And in New York, which has already been springing people because of bail reform in an expedited manner, you even have some cases and people wondering if these folks may be reoffending here as a consequence. All right. Let's get right into it. Jimmy, first I want to start with you on a broader level, and I know this affects all you guys, but everything stops. And for a lot of attorneys that aren't working, for the state, that shuts down. I know nobody puts you guys at the top of the sympathy list, but for people, not just not you just the attorneys, but all the support staff and everything else, things grind to a halt, and stimulus checks aren't flying out to you guys, are they?
No, they're not. And first and foremost, I hope that all of our viewers and all of you are safe and healthy. No, Rich, you're absolutely right. I mean, business just grinds to a halt. There are no real arrests. There are no grand juries. There are no indictments. There are no new cases. Meanwhile, we're all, still very busy working on the cases that we have, because as soon as this is over, as soon as this subsides and the court system is up and running again, we're going to be trying one case after another because, people are either waiting in jail or otherwise just waiting for an adjudication of their case. But in terms of the businesses and what goes on, everything is at a complete standstill. So these are trying times for everybody. Any small business owner, any solo practitioner, anybody who runs their own shop in one way or another is suffering, and it is very difficult times.
Mayo, a practical question, and I've heard two schools of thought on this, and I know you always, even though a former prosecutor, will always side with the defense, but when a case is delayed even longer, you have things like witnesses, physical evidence, etc. I would think if you're a defendant, the edge goes to you when your case finally gets heard, because memories get hazier or evidence isn't easier to be maintained, or it's easier to question. What is the rule of thumb when you finally do hear cases and you have this interregnum of time here. Who gets help more, the prosecution or the defense in criminal cases?
Well, it's a case-by-case determination, and a lot of it depends on who are the witnesses. Are the witnesses still available? You may have a witness, you may have a defendant that gets sick or incapacitated or passes away and is not able to proceed. But generally, just the time alone, I don't think necessarily benefits the defense, because the argument the prosecution always makes is, well, it was a long time ago, you can't expect this person's memory to be so precise. And juries generally are accommodating when that suggestion is set forth, and somewhat less so when it comes to the defense saying the exact same thing. So you can have a police officer who says, look, it was 5 years ago. I don't really remember the specifics, but I remember the main part of the case. You may have a defense witness who says the same thing, but that person's more likely to be considered to be fabricating their story. At least that's been my experience talking to jurors as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney.
You think from a practical basis that there's going to be more of an effort, even by the prosecutors, because of the backlog and all the cases, to try and just settle these things here, or try to work out some plea here so it never sees the inside of a courtroom?
I would think that, first of all, what's striking to me is that you don't see a ton of cases on headlines when you turn the news on. You don't see a lot of violent crime. People do not generally feel less safe based on criminal concerns. They're concerned about their health. But it makes you go back again to when the police shut down after Mayor de Blasio had a run-in with the NYPD, and they stopped making arrests. And you realize that a lot of the arrests maybe didn't need to be made in the first place. So I think that it's an opportunity for prosecutors to reevaluate some, and for them to try to decide whether they need to take such a strict position when it comes to, let's say, your first DWI, or, you know, if somebody has a weapon but they haven't used it and it's just simple possession, you have an out-of-state permit. Maybe some of these cases don't need to be prosecuted in the same manner that they were before.
Doug, you know, practically, when everybody's talking about you got a mask on, you got 6 feet of separation, how would that work with the jury? Just give me the mechanics on how things will change in a courtroom when, you know, we all have our own vision of what it is. You're a guy literally traveling around the country for cases. What will practically change when the world reopens?
I mean, Rich, I don't know. I'm afraid to think about it because, you know, you think about a jury, they're definitely all strangers. They all get together in a central jury room where there could be hundreds of jurors all sitting side by side waiting to be called for individual panels. People are so afraid at this point that it's going to be very difficult to tell people that they have to do that. And it's difficult enough to bring jurors together when they're receiving juror summons. But now when they receive them, if they're afraid, they're going to legitimately say, I'm not going there. I don't care what they do to me. So it's going to be very difficult. Then when you get the jury itself, you're going to have them sitting next to each other. I really don't know how it will work. I'm sure it will be worked out, but I'm not sure how it will be worked out.
It's going to take a while.
And Jimmy, what about that thing everybody's, you know, has a guaranteed right to a fair and speedy trial? That goes out the window because this is a pandemic, I assume.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's clearly good cause here for these adjournments. I think that there are going to be many speedy trial motions that are made, notwithstanding the fact of the pandemic, certainly for those who are incarcerated. It's one thing to say that because of the pandemic, we simply cannot give you a jury trial right now, and I don't think anybody would really disagree with that. But there does come a point in time where you cannot keep somebody incarcerated indefinitely because of that. So the system is very severely impacted, and while there's clearly a good cause shown here, given the pandemic, you know, you have people who are incarcerated are entitled to a speedy trial, and there's only so long you can keep them in there while they wait.
Just a note here before we go to break. Before I talked to you, I talked to a former senator and governor who literally had a hoodie on. You guys look fantastic. I should say Jimmy looks like he's got a halo with that mirror over his head. We know that ain't true. Mayo, definitely you get the gold prize for the best backdrop, a serious barrister. All right, stay with me, guys. When we come back, President Trump has issued an executive order forcing meatpacking plants to stay open. But what about the thousands of workers who have to work in cramped assembly lines? After the break, we'll discuss all the legal issues that could stem from that.